everywhere. Okay. Okay, so welcome everybody. I'm very happy to be here today with our first guests. We are organizing this event, this talk, with in collaboration with our Art and Cinema seminar, which is called Between the Black Box and the White Cube, and with the collaboration of the Humanities Institute at Davis, represented here by the wonderful Katharine Wallerstein, and the Anthropology Image Lab, directed by Tarek Elhaik, who is a faculty in anthropology, in the anthropology department at Davis, and who, with Katharine, is the initiator of a cluster we are part of, and he will say more about it when he's going to introduce the cluster. But let me start for now. Let me just welcome the curatorial duo Francesco Urbano Ragazzi, who organized a very beautiful show on Jonas Mekas in Rome that will end at the end of February. They will surely explain us Mekas' trajectory and their own involvement with him as curators, which I'm very interested in. So for the context of our seminar, I would just like to say that we saw the work of very close friends of Mekas, like Andy Warhol, Nanjun Paik, and so on, Yoko Ono, in these last couple of weeks, and that today we are very happy to ask the curators, who is Jonas Mekas and why his work, basically a 70 years long non-linear diary and critical production, is so relevant in terms of reflection on images in between art and cinema. And we're also interested in knowing more about the use of Mekas, of the concept of venues, meaning where specifically the work of this important artist has been situated, also in terms of spaces. Let's remember he's a traveler, and he also created the Anthology Film Archive in 1970, which is still one of the largest archives devoted to independent filmmaking. So even just that is important. And then he traveled between very different spaces, from Lithuania to United States and more. And I'm sure the Francesco are going to tell us about it. I guess we could say that for Mekas, art is where friendship and joy is, in spite of his own quite hard life experience. I leave now the word to Tarek Elhaik and finally to Francesco Urbano Ragazzi. Thank you very much for being with us today. Tarek.
Thank you very much, Fiamma, for the introductions. You've already said really interesting things, and I will simply add to that both Kathy Wallerstein and I, who are the primary investigators for this research cluster that we've called Venues for Thought Experiments in Aesthetics and Media. It's a research cluster that Fiamma is part of, and we've engaged a series of practitioners who help us think about what a venue is, what is a space or a venue that operates not only within the university, but also transversely to the university or simply outside of the university. We've engaged, for example, even dolphin experts who came to talk to us about their acoustic labs. So we are really operating between the arts, the humanities, and the social sciences, and even other kinds of sciences. Kathy and I look forward to being in conversation with this wonderful curatorial duo. I've recently seen the show in Rome, and I immediately contacted Fiamma and told her, we need to be part of this conversation. And so here we are, and I look forward to it. Kathy, you want to add something?
No, you said it all. It's great to be here and to be part of this conversation and event. And I look forward to the conversation.
So I guess it's our turn now.
Yes.
Thank you very much to Fiamma Montezemolo, Tarek Elhaik, and Katharine Wallerstein for having us for this exciting invitation. So we are very happy to talk about Jonas Mekas' work because he was not only an artist we worked with, but he was also a friend. We started working with him back in 2015, focusing on the last part of his production, which happened, strangely enough, not in cinema theaters, but on the internet. So he was a pioneer until the very last part of his life, and then together with him we developed about 15 projects, exhibitions, publications, screenings, and so on and so forth. So we were very lucky to work with him closely for many years. So our talk will be divided into 3 sections, just to give you a little overlook on what we are going to do today. The first part will be mainly biographical, so we will answer the question who Jonas Mekas was, who Jonas Mekas is, and then we will talk about 2 projects we curated, 2 solo shows by Jonas we curated in recent years. We will focus firstly on the first show we curated in Venice in 2015. It was entitled The Internet Saga, and then we will have a closer look at our last project dedicated to Jonas's work. So Images Are Real, a retrospective exhibition at Mattatoio di Roma, with running until the end of February this year. So let's start answering the question, who is Jonas Mekas, who Jonas Mekas was. So Jonas, as you know, is a filmmaker. He is usually described as the godfather of independent cinema, of avant-garde cinema in America, but he was not American. He was not coming from the US. He was a Lithuanian born filmmaker. He was born in 1922, so exactly 100 years ago, in a tiny little village called Birge in Lithuania. And he started keeping a diary, a written diary, since an early age. And then when he was a teenager, he started also writing poetry and contributing to the cultural section of 2 local magazines located in its region. But Lithuania has also a troubled history, and so Jonas, because Lithuania during World War II was militarily occupied, not 1, not 2, but 3 times. From 1940 to 1941, it was occupied by the Soviet Union. Then from 41 to 44, by the Nazis, and then again from 1944 until the 90s, it was included again, absorbed in the Soviet Union. Jonas opposed both regimes, so he he was involved in distributing propaganda both against the Nazi regime and the Russian regime. And in 1944, together with his brother Adolphus, decided to escape from Lithuania, exactly because of these activities. So he tried to reach Switzerland because a family friend was living there. So he tried to pass through Austria with, of course, with forged IDs, but he was caught by the Nazis and arrested, and he spent more than 1 year in a labor camp as a political prisoner. He tried to escape, and he succeeded in escaping from the camp. He tried to reach, together with his brother Adolphus again, he tried to reach Denmark, but he was only able to hide in a farm in northern Germany. The war ended, and he spent 6 years as a displaced person, so living in refugee camps in Germany. Of course, because Lithuania was occupied by the Soviet Union, he was not able to come back to his homeland. But in 1949, thanks to a United Nations program for displaced person, he was able to get a trip to Chicago. He flew to New York in 1949 with his brother Adolphus again, and when he saw New York, he decided not to go to Chicago but to stay in the city, and he described New York as the city who saved his sanity. The two brothers started applying for some cheap jobs, but they also bought a Bolex camera, a very handy camera. You can see an image here, a very handy camera, which has quite some peculiar features. With the Bolex, you can film at different speeds, but you can also take one-shot images and single frame images. It's very handy. So Jonas used this tool, this camera, somehow as a pen, as his own personal diary. He didn't change model of the model of his camera until the 80s, when he switched to a Sony camera, and he was changing camera only when the previous one was broken. So for him, cameras were like cahiers, notebooks, let's say, and this is very important for his practice. So he employed, in the whole his life, he employed only 6 cameras for making more than 100 movies.
Yeah, and these cameras, as you can see, these are the cameras on the table of on Jonas' table in New York, and basically this work with the diaries was a sort of spiritual practice. in the sense that Jonas Mekas was trying to, since the childhood, he was trying to point the attention on every single aspect of real life, on the details, on the banal everyday life, redescribing, rewriting, and in a sort of a stoic exercise. In this sense, it's very interesting to see how the arrival in New York was coinciding with the beginning of a new diaristic work, which was basically a way to get into the life in New York. So it was a way to look at the reality under a different light, under a different perspective, and with a little filter, which was in this case the Bollets camera. And through the Bollets camera, Jonas started this diaristic path, which in a way followed him until the rest of his life, until the end. And images became his way to react to reality. And in this sense, it's very important to just point attention on what a diary film is. Because, I mean, of course, the diary comes from literature, but on the other side, the idea of applying the diaristic form to the cinema, which in a sense comes from Astruc and the camera stylo, so the pen camera, was actually really some way applied and actualized by Jonas, in the sense that he was really using the camera as a diary, filming almost every day, not everything, but just little moments, with his bullets, and and creating a special relationship with the camera itself. So in a sense, it was the way how Jonas was using the camera and managing it according to his life, to his body, was an important part of reacting to reality through the camera. So it was, you often said that he was a kung fu filmmaker. So it was not, I mean, it was again reacting to something, finding a sort of body position. We could say also that he used to say also that he was a filmer and not a filmmaker. So the idea is to film, to directly film, trying to be in that present, to continuously be in that present, that very moment. And here you can see also the philosophical sense of presence and present. And maybe I can leave you to the words of Jonas about that comes from another diary, of course, another diary film, and it's an excerpt.
Memories, they say, my images are my memories. No, 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 these are not memories. This is all real, what you see. Every image, every detail, everything is real. Everything is real, and it's not a memory, not has It has nothing to do with my memories anymore. Memories are gone, but the images are here, and they're real. What you see, every second of what you see here is real, right there in front of your eyes. What you see, it's real. There, in front of you. Yes, on that screen. It's all real. Who cares about memories? No, I don't care about my memories. But I like what I see, what I recorded with my camera. And now it comes back there and it's all real. Every detail, every second, every frame is real. And I like it. I like what I see. Why else would I show it, share it with you, these images? This reality of images.
So, of course, it's quite a complex statement. You see, Jonas, of course, was producing diary films, but making diaries doesn't equate exactly to composing something which is only subjective or only intimate. For Jonas, making diaries equates to making a reality happen, to reshape the reality he was living in while living in that reality. And it's also important to point out technically that the most part of the editing of his film were made directly on camera, directly using the Bolex and not in the studio. So it really gives you this detail, really gives you not only an idea of the mastery Jonas reached with his camera, but also the point at what point the camera was somehow part of his body, part of the artist's body. Coming back to Jonas's biography, it's also important to state that he was not only an artist. We will come back soon to his artistic practice, but it's important to stress also that he was an organizer and more in general an agitator of the New York cultural scene and film scene. First of all, in 1955, he founded a magazine, Film Culture, which somehow responded to the Cahiers de Cinéma in France. So with this magazine, he tried to diffuse the culture of avant-garde cinema in the US, and it's incredible to think about it because again it was Lithuanian, it was a poor refugee, displaced person. So he was not mastering English as much as he was mastering cinema. Then in 1961, he founded a movement, a group called the New American Cinema Group. And this as this name, it's quite interesting by itself because the group was called American, but it was composed of non-American members, or not exactly American members. It was full of people that were and subjectivities that were rejected from American society at that time. The New American Cinema Group was made of women directors, of homosexuals, of lesbians, queer subjects, and also people like Peter Kubelka, who were not American at all. So they were displaced person or anyway foreigners. So this name, the New American Cinema Group, is a statement in itself coming from a displaced person. It was an attempt to find a new nation, to found a new nation in cinema. In 1951, Jonas wrote the New American Cinema Group manifesto, the New American Cinema Group first statement, and this statement is both it expresses both aesthetical and ethical principle, all of them against the Hollywood industry, so against the studio industry. I would like to read to you some excerpts from this first statement, written again in 1961. We are for art, but not at the expense of life. We don't want false, polished, slick films. We prefer them rough, unpolished, but alive. We don't want rosy films. We want them the color of blood. And then we are seeking new forms of financing, working towards a reorganization of film investing methods, setting up the basis of a free film industry. The New American Cinema is abolishing the budget myth, providing that good internationally marketable films can be made on a budget of $25,000 to $200,000. We believe that cinema is indivisibly a personal expression. So as you see, this idea of having a poor, simple, personal cinema intertwines with the idea of having a cinema which is fairer in a sense and freer also. So again, ethics and aesthetics intertwines in Jonas's cinema. Then he founded the Anthropology Film Archives, which is still one of the main institutions for the preservation of and diffusion of independent films in the US, but I would say in the world. And the Anthropology Film Archives, you see here the building where nowadays the institution is located, but in a previous venue of the institution, there was also this cinema theater, which was designed by Peter Kubelka, and it's called the Invisible Cinema. So here we start understanding how venues are related to Jonas's work and understanding of cinema. As you see in this cinema, each viewer is separated from the other by two barriers on the side of each viewer, and also the cinema walls, the chairs, and everything in the room is painted black. So basically, this cinema is the first version of a metaverse, as we would call it today. So the cinema screen become a landscape in itself.
Yeah, but this was not the only way to, I mean, the relocation of images in this kind of practice is more, it's very varied, in the sense that this is a Kubelka version of the cinema theater, but then there was also a very opposite condition of fruition of cinema, like in the case of the expanded cinema, which was on different screens. And again, this was part of one of the, let's say, the branches of the new American cinema group with Stan van der Beek and Jonas himself. And also following Jonas' attitude, for instance, the way people can experience the diary films is exactly like, is a sort of meta reaction to the reaction to reality. So in a sense, the people can really be into the film or completely indifferent to it. And they can sleep on, come back and go outside and so on. So, I mean, it's not, there is also a multiplicity of formats and methods and relationship that you can involve that the film can involve you in the view. So it's going back to diaries. It's important to say again that the relocation it's a continuous process. So in a sense, Jonas had written diaries from one side, so he had like this literary practice, which also was which had many different levels, because it was literary, so it was poetry basically, and the poetry was going in a very essential direction, so through the haiku, so the Japanese poetry. And then so from the idilio to the haiku, Jonas experimented many different forms of poetry all along his life. And then also he used to do like some also to transform this poetry into wall paintings or drawings or this kind of wall painting, yeah, again. And then there is also a series of sound diaries, which often are interconnected with the diary films, but they can be also pieces in themselves. So here you can see two tracks that became audio tracks and also audio installations in gallery spaces and museums. And then we are back to the diary films, and the first diary film, let's say, I mean, is used to be the Walden, also called the Diary, Notes and Sketches. And Walden was made in 1968. Is a feature film in the sense that it takes 2 hours, more or less. And it's just, in this case, Jonas just gathered together all the first diaries he made in the first 10 years of career, let's say. So in this case, there is no, the chronological order was the only criteria. And then, but then, of course, with the overlapping of diaries, you will see how also the strategy of composition could change. And again, talking about relocation, the film can be exhibited in a movie theater, in a cinema theater, and then can become a piece for gallery spaces, museums, and so on and so forth. Then also in this sort of continuous production that goes from a medium to another, you can see also how, in a sort of ecology, Jonas films can also become frozen film frames and photo series. So here you can see the first picture on your left is basically the floor of Jonas' studio after the editing, and all these little slices of celluloid became often series, like autonomous series of photographs, so of slides in a sense, and yeah, he used to call them rillettes, like in the French recipe, where you can use the rest of the pork for new recipes. And in this case, he used the rest of the editing, so the outtakes from the editing, for creating new photo series, which are frozen from film frames, so still from film.
So the idea here is that every moment needs to be celebrated, can't be simply thrown away or excluded. So that's why we are talking about ecology and ecology of images here.
And then the next level that Jonas reached was the internet, because at the beginning, like in more or less in 2006, he started producing films for the internet and for his own website, which was designed for at that time. And he started from the re-editing of previous films. So he started with this series called The First 40s. And the first 40 is like 40 films made for these for being viewed on screen online. And then after that, so this was the first year, let's say, the first step. And then the further step was 365 Day Project. So it was a project in 2007 when Jonas started to do a film a day every day, and posting and editing and posting it directly on his website every day. So this was a marathon. It was 85 at the time, and YouTube was
you don't have like time. You're just passing by and busy. You want to be there. You want to.
Sorry, I don't know what happened.
Sorry, someone had got in.
yeah. It was Jonas' voice anyway, so it was appropriate. But anyway, yeah, going back to the marathon, 365 the project was like 2 hours. It was the year after the start, the birth of YouTube. So really, it was embracing this way of producing and sharing content on screen and online. Really, when this was just the beginning of a practice, I mean, in a wide sense. So in a sense, you can see how it was really pioneering this relationship with the camera in a personal way since the beginning to the internet.
Yeah, you need to think that yeah, YouTube was launched in 2005 and Instagram was launched in 2011. So the idea of sharing one content every day or one clip every day was absolutely not common. So that's why we are talking about Jonas being a pioneer. Exactly looking at this work, we thought that some way Jonas invented the internet we are living in, the internet of social media. He started filming his own life and sharing it with his friends back in the 60s. So what we are doing now with the cameras we have in our pockets is also because Jonas made his cinema and his avant-garde cinema. So from this premise, we invited him to make a solo exhibition in Venice in 2015. So looking at this last part of his production in order to understand his work in retrospect. So we really wanted to claim that Jonas Mekas invented the internet, at least aesthetically and ideologically. So we invited him to what we called the Internet Saga. We were interested at that time in considering how the internet was shaping our time and our way of living into timelines, into different temporalities. We were also considering that at that time the metaphors to describe the internet were switching from spatial metaphors, so with virtual space, with virtual world, and so on and so forth, to time-related metaphors. So Facebook, of course, the idea of reading is a matter of time, but also Instagram, Twitter. Tweet is, of course, related to a melody. So again, it's about temporal. A temporal dimension. So we decided to invite him as the somehow the to invite Jonas as the inventor of this way of living into time. The venue we selected, it's a peculiar one. It is called Palazzo Foscari Contarini, and it's in front of the train station on the Venice island. This is an historical building, a 15th century palazzo, a doge, so the king of the city, the mayor of the city, one of the mayors of the city were born. So it has also an historical value as a building. You can see it from outside. Here's Jonas filming outside the building, but in 2013, this 15th century palazzo was converted into a Burger King. And we thought, so the marble columns and everything that you feel is historical, it is actually historical. Also, the Murano chandelier is an original piece, but at the same time, the formica tables of the fast food restaurants are also original and real fast food restaurant items. And we thought that somehow this very space was a perfect description of the internet, where different timelines and different temporalities are collapsing one into the other, almost ignoring themselves reciprocally. So we thought that this clash of temporalities were not to be judged, even if it could be disgusting, aesthetically disgusting, not to see this, but it was also an opportunity to think about how temporalities were shaped in our age. So as you can see, it was a real fast food restaurant, and it was open to normal customers during all the duration of the show. The interventions Jonas made specifically for this occasion were basically three. There was an audio diary in the courtyard, diffused, broadcasted in the courtyard of the palazzo. Then there were 768 frozen film frames coming from all these films from the end of the 50s to the 2000s. So and they were applied on the windows as the windows, transforming the windows of the fast food restaurants of the windows of a cathedral-like space, let's say. So, but in this case, the images were not religious images, but they were somehow the moments in Jonas's life, and the life of the artist was represented, the whole life of the artist was represented on these windows. And then on the screens, on the three screens of the fast food, which were already there, and they were broadcasting music videos and football matches, basically were occupied by three new editings from Jonas's online diaries. So as you can see, all these interventions were made not to add anything to the original space. So the exhibition, the Internet Saga, was an immaterial exhibition, but at the same time, the images and the sound, the very loud sound of the films and of the audio diary were invading the space and somehow perverting its nature, its very nature of fast food restaurant.
Yeah, in a sense, we wanted to celebrate reality. And this was, in a sense, the best way to celebrate Jonas' sense of reality. So it was just a normal people place where people could coexist or exist, and there was no pretension to art. No, the people were not obliged to participate to this ritual, but they were like they could assess very freely the artwork Otherwise, they could just eat their own burgers. It was interesting that the space was open every day for almost 24 hours. So it was like the longest running exhibition during the Biennale. But then, and probably the most visited, and also the, I mean, even having different kind of audiences collapsing. And here you can see more or less the mood of the exhibition. So people very into this show, and people completely on the other side, completely indifferent to it. And this was to us a sort of mirror of our ages and our time, where, I mean, you can see how there is a sort of overlapping of different many layers of time, where the marble columns, the personal timelines are really going into many different directions, and the meeting point is often missing. But this was what we wanted to represent, and also some way to make explode. And this explosion was the internet saga.
It's important also to say that this exhibition was in conjunction with the Venice Biennale, but it was not part with the official program of the biennial. So also this position responded to Jonas's claim for independence and autonomy in cinema. So we invited someone who fought for independence in cinema to exhibit at an independent event, to try to fight somehow against the exploitation of the spaces that somehow sometimes happens through the Biennale in Venice.
Yeah, and when we opened the show, it was I mean, it became immediately a case. It was interesting because at the beginning it was very hard to find all the sponsors for and the funding for making the show. So we had some troubles because of the venues. Of the venue and the Burger King, of course, the presence of this brand on the back was some way affecting a lot our fundraising. But then after the opening, the exhibition became a case immediately, because in a sense, this occupation through poetry of the space was a strong statement that finally was really some way touching the people and the media, and so we had to resist in a sense during the first months of this preparation. But then the show was incredibly participated.
Yeah, it's important to highlight that as much as we decided to stay neutral in terms of judgment of this space, we decided also to stay neutral in economical terms. So we decided to refuse any fundings coming from the fast food directly. So that's why we struggled for fundraising at the beginning, in the first phases of the making of the show.
Yeah, this I mean, this presence of parallel layers was really part of this. I mean, it was present also in this part of the process. So we were there, but we were not part of the company. So in a sense, this sort of connection was pervading all the aspect of this project. And
of course, when the fast food restaurant opened in 2013, it was there was a huge debate if it was right to use an historical venue this way. You have to think from one side. Of course, the debate was interesting. It was right to question the presence of the fast food restaurant inside the building, but from the other side, the building was a private building, so it was not belonging to the community. And the building stayed closed, unoccupied for 10 years before the fast food restaurant taking it. So we decided to test a third way. So to occupy the fast food restaurant as if it was our own pavilion, and trying to negotiate our own presence inside the palazzo, trying to somehow react to the presence of the fast food restaurant in the building through Jonas's work.
And then, of course, one of the venues of the show was the mediatic diffusion of it. So there was like they all participated to the existence of that space on the internet and on paper and everywhere. And so this also the activation of the communication from the project to different media. It was, I mean, part itself of the project. So it's part of the artwork, let's say. And then, yeah, okay, we can go probably to Rome now.
We can switch to a totally different context, so an institutional one. The Mattatoio di Roma was a former slaughtering house, which was transformed into a museum space belonging to the city of Rome. So it's part of the city museum system in the Italian capital. So it's a totally different venue. Not only ideologically, but also architecturally, in the sense that the Palazzo Foscari Contarini was quite a small space, while at Mattatoio di Roma we had the chance to curate a proper retrospective exhibition of Jonas's work. So the purpose of the show was totally different. Here we are in the show opened in 2022. So it was a celebration of the of 100 years from the centennial from the birth of Jonas Mekas, and the purpose of the show was introducing to Jonas's work a very wide audience. So the purpose of this show was totally different, was celebratory, but also somehow introductive, let's say. Let's start from the structure of the show. We thought about this idea of transformation of the venue, so from slaughtering house to a cultural space, as a healing process somehow, which responded also to Jonas's use of the camera and Jonas's use of cinema. So we decided to structure the show in three parts. And our initial inspiration was Dante's Divina Commedia, which was also a reference Jonas employed largely throughout his career and in his movies, more specifically. So this is not announced, it is declared at the beginning of the show, but it's it is not, let's say, announced in the exhibition space, but we have a first part which corresponds to the Inferno, to hell. Then we move to Purgatorio, to Purgatory, and then we finally reach heaven. We reach Paradiso. So in this way, we interpreted the space referring to something that was quite very close to Jonas and to Jonas's practice. So you have to imagine that Sebastian Mekas, Jonas's son, knows large parts of the Divina Commedia by heart. So he was really attached to Dante's text. So let's start from hell. We decided to start from a quite recent piece to state that, of course, this was a retrospective exhibition, but we didn't want to look at Jonas's work in a passatist way and only in a celebratory way. We really wanted to ask ourselves what Jonas has to say now in this era, in the present moment we are living. So we started with a work which is the shot of the fall of the Twin Towers, filmed from the rooftop of Jonas's studio. So we started with a very traumatic image that really resonates in everybody's eyes and mind. So even very young visitors of the show surely has this image in their mind, in their memories. So we wanted to start with an historical trauma to which everybody can relate, and then we associated this recent work, filmed, of course, in 2001, in September 2001, with the second feature film Jonas made in 1964. This film is entitled The Brig, and it won the Golden Lion at the Venice Film Festival in 1964 for Best Documentary. And this category, this prize it's quite interesting because Jonas is not filming reality in this case, but it's filming The Brig, which was a play put on stage by the Living Theatre by Judith Malina. So of course it's a fictional event. Jonas, we can see an excerpt of the movie.
Now smoke it, hit, hot, knock down, hot,
So as you can see, Jonas is a reporter, no, as if he's acting, is filming as if he was a war reporter, directly leaving the battlefield, no, in this case. And Jonas said that he made this film using the style of the cinéma vérité. Really, but he employed the styles of cinéma vérité to film something that was staged, was clearly staged. In its style of filming, he started questioning the concept of reality itself, and how the camera was producing or reacting or recording a real event, which was also staged. Jonas didn't see the play before filming, so he was really improvising with his camera. So the relationship with reality and truth, it's quite complex in this seminal work, and it is complex also because the author of this play was imprisoned in Japan in a labor camp. As much as Jonas. The author's experiences in labor camps resonated with Jonas's life as in a mirror play, let's say. With this choice, with these associations, we wanted to state that trauma and historical trauma is at the core of the diaristic cinema made by Jonas in later years.
Yeah, and going back to the space, the film was surrounded by these pictures from this photo series, this frozen frame series called Purgatorio, so Purgatory, and here these are 89 stills from one of the first film Jonas made when he landed in New York. So this is in Williamsburg, Brooklyn, where Jonas used to live when he landed in New York, and so basically you can see the poor neighborhood, and also some details related to the Lithuanian community who was also often living in that area. So in a sense, you see how a displaced person arriving in New York, the first impact of his arrival in New York, and also the quest for a point of references or attachments to reality that can help him to some way to not be totally lost. And again, you can see how the cinema, in a sense, so this is why also the film is called Purgatory, because it's really in between the total the old life, but also all the traumas of the war, and the hope for a new life that starts from here. And yeah, so the series, strangely enough, was not produced when it was, it was filmed as a diary in 1949, 45. But then the piece was produced, was one of the last work that Jonas wanted to produce. So it was in 2018, yeah. He proposed us to show this piece, which was like one of his last will, let's say. So it's interesting to see also how You probably remember before we were talking about how memory are gone, Jonas said, but in a sense, memories can come back because they are real images, so they can be real again, and they are images, are places, are venues that we can live in, and we are inhabiting these images through our mind, through our view, through our body, so this part of the show was going toward Walden. So the film that we mentioned before now appears in a very special version, which is a 2-screen version. So normally Walden is a film for it's projected on a single screen. But once Jonas projected it on 2 screens at Anthropology Film Archives in the 90s. So also the disruption and the multiplication that happened to the film was to us very interesting to experience in this exhibition and to exhibit. And so we exhibited this very special version of Walden, which also create new combinations and new reactions. And so the 2 screens are, and also the sounds are merging and some way matching in very different variation and combinations.
And also, as you can see, for Jonas, quite every work was a living being. So a film, a movie, a project has not a fixed shape, but images can travel from screen to screen, from one medium to the other, and evolve together with the life of the artist that created them. So that's also why we wanted to show Walden in this special composition.
There is a strange anecdote that some way inspired us for the show, which comes from Jonas and the sons of Breakage, who were like super obsessed with circus, because they watched Jonas Mekas circus, which is called Notes on the Circus, and it's also part of Walden. And then the kids were asking, let's say violently, to their father to see the circus finally when the circus was in their country. And then they went to the circus and they were totally disappointed because they wanted Jonas circus. So again, images can be very inspiring, but also and reality can be disappointing sometimes. And this is just a little excerpt from the circus. No, it doesn't work. I don't know why. So again, the reality can be disappointing.
We have a few more minutes left anyway, yeah?
Okay.
Let's move on. Then the exhibition continues, and the focus is on a work called Birth of a Nation. So again, this idea that the nation of Jonas as a displaced person is not a real country, but cinema, and the relationships that he was able to create through cinema.
Yeah, and in this case, we just some way dismounted a film, which is a film from the 97, and this 85-minute film was also an installation on 4 screens, and then became a photo series of 40. And then we found all the names of the appearing artists, in order of appearance. And then from this list, we were able to find in the film all the faces and all the portraits. So this is what you see in the show. So 168 portraits that come directly from the movie.
Yeah, basically the movie is a collection of portraits of the filmmakers and art critics and founders of institutions that made the history of independent cinema according to Jonas. So again, the diaristic approach to cinema is employed in an historical way. It's a way for Jonas to tell the story. In this case, to tell the story of independent cinema and to fix a canon of avant-garde cinema in America and abroad. Then we enter into the last part of the show, where the healing process of Jonas's cinema is completed. The section starts with WTC haiku, an haiku dedicated to the Twin Towers. So Jonas edited all the scenes where the Twin Towers appear from his previous films. Somehow the traumatic event in history we encounter at the beginning of this show comes back here in a new shape, in a new way. So somehow through cinema, the Twin Towers, through images, the Twin Towers are still there, are still present in another form. Then the exhibition ends with a rearrangement, but also a materialization of, in an instant it all came back to me, which is the work we showed on the windows in Venice. So the images that were printed on Palazzo Foscari Contarini are now printed on window panes and on glass panes. So the work has now a more sculptural identity, and together with it we exhibited also the online diaries and the 365-day project, which is made only of happy moments in Jonas's life from the year 2007. So again, you see not only how much the camera is employed to insist on happiness and to overcome the horror of history, but also how Jonas was a pioneer in moving images, in how moving images are employed nowadays.
I think we don't have so much time, so we just stop a little bit.
I would like to thank you so very much, because it was a wonderful presentation. Probably we could have gone on and on and on. But I wanted to add two little things, and then I wanted Tarek to take care of the Q&A and the mini conversation with you.
Mm-hmm.
I would like to say to the people that are in the class, in this seminar, that if you see a lot of reference to what we've been working on these last weeks, also to artists, friends of Mekas, like Warhol, etc., but Van der Beek, but also this life as a form of art, continuous work, no? So life is art, and these people transform their life in art, no? That I think is very important. The diary is a lot to do with it. I really think that the role of Mekas as an outsider, as a displaced person, as Francesco said, as a big part on the certain sensitivity of feeling at home or not at home anywhere. And I think is I'm particularly touched by this kind of artist and artist production of someone who doesn't really have a definite sense of home anywhere and is continuing searching it, which doesn't coincide with the place necessarily, no? Can be with the practice, or can be with the person, can be with love, whatever. But this continuous search that you feel in his work is amazing. As it is the use of internet, basically when he was 85, you said, no? And I mean, when the blog was starting, he's basically started inventing his own blog form through images, which is really quite impressive. But to conclude, the thing I love the most is the fast food show, and also the show that you curated here in the Slaughterhouse in Rome. Is it tells a lot about not just Mekas, but about you two as curators who are in touch not just with the imagination of the artist, but your own. Because the way you exhibit the work as a venue, the way you choose the venue and you manipulate and you play with the venue and connect it with the specific artwork of the specific artist, it's really imaginative. And so at this point, I have a question, but I'll make it after, and I would like Tarek to take over.
So thank you so much for this inspiring presentation of your curatorial work and the way you have not only befriended but also carefully observed in a way that shows that Mekas's media ecology moves not only across various media that once upon a time used to have their own specificity, which is something that Mekas, I think, remained attached to. But at the same time, he is really one of the early practitioners coming out from experimental cinema that really embraced this new media ecology in a different way, perhaps, than Stuart Brand, who was kind of the creator of the whole Earth catalog, right? Which was in a media book form, a sort of Google browser, right? Avant la lettre, right? So there are many multiple narratives, you know, for the rise of the internet and digital culture, from cybernetics to Marshall McLuhan and so on. So I think the way you curate his work makes it locates him within the rise of this new media ecology, and you move us also, you know, from, you know, the venues that I was going to talk to you about was, you know, the Anthropology Film Archive, which you've covered quite nicely. Then, of course, the journal Film Culture, which in itself is a venue of sort. A venue does not have to be a physical space in the sense of a three-dimensional room or a series of spaces. And then you have this incredible shape-shifting kind of curatorial practice that mirrors the shape-shifting quality of Mekas's co-creation of this new media ecology that you've been really so nicely talking about, moving from New York, the Anthropology Film Archive building, all the way to the movie theater designed by Kubelka, and then, you know, kind of at the moment where film theory also was moving towards screen theory, which was very skeptical of the movie theater itself, which many film theorists saw as a kind of a womb in which spectators became kind of almost interpolated as subjects, right? Almost like Plato's allegory of the cave, right? Chained in front of this kind of representations that were perceived as illusions, and that therefore the movie theater was perceived as a place in which people were duped, spectators were duped, right? So Mekas, I think, really, even the tension with Kubelka, in the sense, in the design of the architecture, right, the infrastructure of the theater itself, shows that perhaps Meka not only is a new media ecologist, but he's also, his understanding of venue is a distributed understanding of venue, right? Or this kind of distributed kind of practice, right? That we can call filmer, as you nicely put it, but also venue worker, but a distributed venue worker of sort. Okay, so that's one way of putting it. Then, as you were talking, I didn't find the reference in Pierre Hadot's important book, Philosophy as a Spiritual Practice, where he links the Stoics and the Cynics. And you mentioned him as a Stoic, right? So very quickly, a Cynic is a member of a Greek philosophical sect that flourished from the 4th century BC well into the Common Era, distinguished as much for its unconventional way of life as for its rejection of traditional social and political arrangements. And it inspired, of course, cosmopolitan utopias and communal anarchism, right? So Meka's community, his communities of friends that we see later on in the portraits that you show at the end, shows us that film is not only a philia, right? A cinephilia of sorts, right? Where there is a series of friendships that are created out of the love for cinema, but the community that forms around it. But it's also a form of hospitality itself, right? And I think this connects with Fiamma's comments about your representation of Mekas as this kind of host, right? Through the medium of cinema that is no longer a specific medium, right? It's becoming like this new ecological medium of sorts that creates an ecosystem where friends can flourish together, but also foreigners can flourish together, right? The Stoics, on the other hand, responded to the Cynics, right? And they said, okay, this is a little bit too radical for us, right? And we need somehow to make it into this world, right? So they became a sort kind of spiritual practice, right? That taught people how to be, well, we understand the term Stoic today as, to be calm in the face of anxiety and so on. So what I like about your presentation is you present to us Mekas as, and his practice, his media practice, his film practice, his venue work practice as a sort of a practice that has a spiritual vocation, and a spiritual vocation that plays with being immersed in the world of images which are real. And at the same time, it attends to a very intriguing operation that uses the diary in a form that is very different from the way anthropologists have used the diary. For example, the diary is something that we hide, right? It's with some exceptions. And when diary content escaped from the private realm, it created some incredible controversies in the history of anthropology, right? And there are two particular examples that I won't get into. What Mekas does, and the way you curate this particular diaristic aspect of his work, shows us that in his case, there is something personal but is not subjective. So you can address something that is personal but not in subjective way. The diary is immediately public. So this personal public that is not subjective, I think, is quite brilliant. I mean, at least that's the way I read your kind of observation of his own image work, right? And venue work itself. And then the last point is this notion of parasite, right? I love, and I want to hear more about the way you positioned yourself vis-a-vis Venice, right? So the Burger King, right, in the Palazzo, I can't remember the name, I think it's the Palazzo...
Foscari Contarini.
It's the Palazzo Foscari, right? So it's not social art or social work, art, right? It's a different way of inserting yourself into the real. So you are a parasitical to the biennial. Perhaps that's not the term, but that's a term that in anthropology we've been using in the past 20 years. So it's a parasite, right? The site would be the Venice biennial, which is like the kind of the glorious and important, of course, is it a venue or is it an art event? We can talk about that. But the venue itself becomes, what Paul Rabinow calls an adjacent to the site itself. So this combination of adjacency, immersion, and then remediation of a relationship between two venues, a Burger King venue, which used to be a palace, with the multi-sided dimension of the Venice Biennial. I'd like to hear you talk a little bit more about that. But to make it brief, I want to thank you for also the way your curatorial practice moves in not only the venues that Mekas has created or participated to, but you yourself, to your own curatorial practice, you're almost like an observer in like a second dimension, observing him, observing the world. And then it loops back into your own practice, right? So I just want to, stop here and then just to perhaps invite you to expand a little bit on this.
Sorry if I intrude, Francesco. I think you could maybe respond for 10 minutes, 5-10 minutes, and then we can maybe open up to a couple of questions.
Absolutely.
Because we had to close in 20 minutes total, more or less.
Thank you so much for the very interesting remarks, even too kind. I would just say something about the concept of venues, or what I think a venue is in Mekas cinema, related to your idea, Tarek, of dissemination or dispersion of the venue itself, and then maybe I leave the stage to you, Francesco. I think it's important to understand that a venue is not a background, it's not something that exists before a network of people living in a space. In a sense, through Jonas's cinema, we see how the network creates the space, creates the venue. So we really like to think to some of Jonas's work as ubiquitous. So as we said, there's in many cases there's not just the work, the one single work, one single object, but there is really a network of ways for presenting the work. And these varieties, these variations, these passages from one screen to multiple screens, to photography, to writings, why not, really creates the identity of the work, which is not embodied in one single object, but is more this living being, this life itself, that evolves through different objects. So I think it's really Jonas's work and practice gave us the opportunity to think also at exhibitions in these terms. For us, the exhibitions don't stop in the exhibition space, but continues also in the mediatic space that surrounds them. So the communication of a show is not separated from the show itself. In a sense, it's a way to let the show become a mirror game somehow. So to insist on the relativity of an exhibition, of the idea that an exhibition is constructed through different gazes and not only by the curatorial gaze. And the Burger King is really pertinent in this sense because it was visited not only by collectors or art goers as in any other biennial exhibition, but also by people who don't know what contemporary art is. So this complexity of gazes really created the show, and there were no hierarchies determining which gaze was more important than the other. Of course, the burger eaters were using the space as correctly as the visitors of the show who detested the fast food restaurant.
Yeah, and talking about the parasitary strategy, I will use the word compensation, like from the psychological field, or also some way quoting Casetti, because I mean there is a cinema is often an art is often a compensatory space where, I mean, Jonas used to say, I'm a displaced person, but cinema is my country. So again, you can inhabitate images, you can project images and live there. And this is interesting how the point is not the medium. The medium is life itself. And the problem is not how to edit this film or to exhibit this piece, but mostly the problem is how to live our life, how to be happy. And this is a common problem. This is the most democratic problem we can share. And at some point, when we are in front of life itself, the present time, without the expectations, without the show, without the predetermination, without the purpose, we are in the present time, we are within our own life, and we have to solve it. And this is some way the most political aspect of being in our life, and the most political aspect of Jonas' work. And some way this was the meeting point between our because I mean the attention that we can give to the work of artists is a way to understand a possibility of happiness that they can evoke. So as curators, we are just giving attention to a certain possibility for people, for a part of the world, to reach a certain sense of happiness.
I will continue this conversation with you by other means some other time, but what you're saying about happiness is really, really important. I mean, it's an old ideal of ancient philosophy. I mean, the attainment of happiness by what means. And I think it's very interesting when we replace philosophy with cinephilia, it produces precisely this convergence of philosophy as a spiritual practice and cinema as a spiritual practice that aims for this strange thing we call happiness. And it's really an interesting point. I think Kathy has a question.
Sorry about that. Thank you so much. That was just absolutely fascinating and enriching. And I learned so much about Mekas and about your work. And I'm going to try to come see the show before it closes, if I can. So I have so many thoughts and questions, but I'll just ask one, which is, can you, I'm really, this idea of the camera, of the image as the real and memory as not. I mean, he doesn't quite say memory is not the real, but what does memory matter? The image is the real. And of course, I think of, memories and mediation. I think of Bergson and his writing on memory. And I'm wondering if you can comment on the camera as mediation and your thoughts on what Jonas Mekas thought about the camera as mediation, or just really your thoughts, in particular vis-a-vis memory, because both are forms of mediation. Yeah, so I'm just going to leave it there.
Francesco, I mute you because
you
when other people speak, there is something on your side that interferes with the.
Okay, we'll be sure to.
Okay, sorry to mute you.
No problem. No.
Yeah, yeah. The mediation of, I mean, again, it's interesting because I mean, Jonas and Jonas practice, but also all the people around New American cinema were some way creating. I mean, they were like writing a different history of cinema, which is a cinema from a personal perspective. So it's not the industry of cinema. So cinema as an industry, but more the personal way of using a camera to go through life. And that's why, I mean, the mediation of the camera is some way was just a way to imagine and also make exist the way we are using the camera. I mean, in a sense, what they were trying to do, it was the most quick and immediate and improvisational way to use a camera. So there was the inspiration was the haiku, the jazz, all these improvisational forms, which are again related to not to the past and not to the future, but to the present. So it's a present continuous, a discontinuous present continuous. So it's this is the point. And what they did, I mean, nowadays we all are using the camera, trying to use it as an immediate medium. So it's not immediate. We know that it's not immediate at all because we are in a series of boxes of mediums and media and also in channels. But the direct relationship of the maker, the filmmaker, who is at the same time a viewer, it's something that was some way invented at that time through this kind of practice. So we are some way responding to this mediation and this immediate mediation, but it's still an open question because again, the way we are thinking, the way we are reacting to things without a camera, it's faster and faster and faster. So we are some way following this the fast steps of our mind through the camera. I don't know if I'm...
Yeah, I would say that mediation in Jonas's cinema through camera happens in two distinct ways, in two distinct moments. So from one side, it happens when Jonas's Jonas films reality, because the camera is immedately a filter between him, a very shy person who is not was not at least at the beginning, who was not able to speak English very well, and the rest of the world. So really the very fact that he was holding a camera all the time was a filter between him and reality, and a filter that allowed him to stay present to himself while living his life. So detaching him from living his life, but at the same time allowing him to stay present to his life. So this is the first the first way we can think about the camera as a filter. And then the second way happens, I think happens during the editing, because for Jonas, filming was really an exercise in focusing only on happy moments in his life. And it was like that more and more in his practice. So editing a movie is really an exercise in filtering only the intense or happy or relevant moments in his life. And that's why we are talking about a spiritual exercise or a stoic or a scenic exercise, because through cinema he was really building his own life. One small example, when he presented as I was moving ahead, I saw brief glimpses of beauty, one of his latest diary films. The film is very joyous. Is about his family. There are a lot of family scenes, but actually he was divorcing from his wife. They decided, friendly, but of course also willingly, to move on and live two separate lives after many years together. So it was also a traumatic moment in his life, and through his movie he was able also to somehow to stay focused, to recollect his happy memories, to recollect also an image of his family, of his own family life. So in this sense, the camera and cinema were filters to what he was living.
Wonderful. I think that we should leave space to a couple of questions from students. Emil, I see that you are online, and I see that you are in the Davis venue, the cafeteria, I think, right? So I would let Emil talk, and then if there is one other question from another student, I would be so happy, and then we could close because it's almost 11, I would say. Emil.
Hello, thank you for having this talk. It was really, oh, can you hear me?
Raise your volume as much as you can.
Oh, let's see,
No, talk.
Okay. So I guess thank you for this talk. It was very informative. And what I found interesting in this discourse was that Jonas Mekas seems to like attribute value to the real more than anything else. And I'm coming into this video art installation class from the perspective of a cinema major with an emphasis on like more traditional narrative cinema. And obviously Mekas would see like traditional narrative cinema and documentary style footage as equally real. But I'm wondering if he sees one as having more meaning than another. And on a side question, I want to I'm wondering how he reconciles like editing as potentially like taking away from the real in a sense.
Can you please repeat the second part of your question?
Yes, because what I understand is that in discourses in cinema, there are arguments from Andre Bazin, for example, as editing sort of taking away from the real of like that cinema offers. And I want to I'm wondering what what Mekas's take would potentially be on that.
Okay, so the first question about a hierarchy between, let's say, documentaristic style and a narrative style. I think there are no hierarchies, but more an attitude towards the industry. So the new American cinema is made by of filmmakers who really explored every kind of cinema, from abstract cinema, structuralist cinema, even more narrative ones. And this plurality was very important because it was related to a radically democratic principle that animated the New American Cinema Group. So I don't think there is, we can say there was a hierarchy between documentary and fiction, or documentary and narratives. It was more important to them to think about the production process of a movie, and that movie to be personal, so to be attached to the life, but also to the to a specific ideological thinking of the author who was producing that movie. So I think it's an attitude against Hollywood. It's an attitude against the studios industry, and not and it's not related. New American cinema is not related to a specific hierarchy or a style.
But you probably, I mean, you all know this. I mean, how being part of an industry or an industrial process can affect deeply an artwork, and the way you look at an artwork, and all the context and the frame of your production. And this could really change a lot. I mean, the very personal need that is behind an artwork, the urgency that create the condition of an artwork, is often very far from the materialization in an industrial outcome. So this is what they were trying to do. They were insisting on this very primal urgency.
Mm-hmm. But for example, Mekas dedicated one of his movies to Scorsese. He had relationships with Spielberg. So it's the industry has to be considered as a system and not a network of people. So he really valued the work of some Hollywood directors, for instance. So it would be interesting to study more this relationship. Coming to your second question, which is more philosophical, I think we really like the idea that Jonas is not a filmmaker but a reality maker. So of course there is a dialectic between reality and fiction in all Jonas's movies and Jonas's production. You see very well. You see it very well if you consider The Brig, for instance. No, the documentary film about the theatrical play. You can't really decide if this is reality or fiction, because it's both. And I think this is this reveals a relativistic idea of reality. So reality is not, again, one thing, but it's the result of multiplicity of gazes. So I think that we need to understand the concept of reality to understand your question. So of course, if you think at reality as a fixed thing, Jonas's movies, of course, are very far from reality. They are fiction in a sense. But if you think about reality as this as constructed by different cases, I think Jonas's movies are very, very real.
Yeah, and again, the diary can help with this notion of reality, because in the diary you are in the place of the. I mean, in the written diary you have to. I mean, it takes time to write about what happened, but in a film diary, which is the first reaction to reality, you are in that moment. And there is this coincidence, which is the very peculiar way of being in a film diary, so you don't know what will happen, and you don't know what will be. So what will be? So you are in the reality. The reality is exactly this: the place of unexpectation, of uncertainty, of doubt, and so on. So the recreation of reality through the camera is exactly to create an unstaged place for an expectation.
So wonderful, really. Is there one very last question from a student? I think many feel intimidated, but because we just started. But you see a lot of connection between what the Francescos are saying and the expanded cinema work we analyze, Joseph Boyce that punches the TV because you have to wake up and you don't let yourself sleep and get dragged by its stupidity. The reaction to video art, the first video artist with the portapac that have been Bao. We saw all this, there are so many references to what they're saying, what we have been saying. So for example, the fact that we want to distinguish expanded cinema from Hollywood, because expanded cinema wants you to remember that you're living a fiction, that that film, you don't have to become the character that you're looking at. You don't have to sort of waking up. You have to see that cinema is a fiction, that there is the machine, there is the light, that there is the sound, that is dirty, that there is life in it, and is not clean as Hollywood wants you to believe. So if there are no other questions, we should close because we're already late. Let me see, I see something in the chat, not just people that are happy. I'm so delighted by this event. I would like to thank Francesco, the two Francescos so much, and all the students for being with us today for Katharine Wallerstein Humanities Institute, Tarek Elhaik Anthropology Image Lab, and the cluster that allowed us to invite the Francesco. And we really hope to have them back very soon. So thank you.
Thank you very, very much.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Congratulations.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.